On this episode of the SBR podcast, we're going to be commemorating the end of Season 1. In just this first season, I brought you 11 exclusive interviews with prominent professionals in the sports business world. From sales directors of NBA and MLB franchises, to an orthopedic surgeon, a sports hypnotist, and many more. I hope you've enjoyed this journey with me. I'm beyond excited for Season 2. But before we get there, I hope you enjoyed these highlights from Season 1, commemorating the best moments from each one of our first 11 episodes together. Going into the sports industry, right, there's so many options. And one thing I want to discuss is kind of pre-COVID, and I'm sure it'll be there post-COVID, hopefully, is the globalization of the NBA. It doesn't seem like it's slowing up. You're out on the West Coast, and I just kind of have a couple questions, right? We've discussed in the past about who your end user is, who your target market is, and you reach out through group sales in the community. But I know you discussed prior with me that you actually have a lot of international fan interest coming from places like China, over in Europe, different areas of the world. Can you kind of touch upon that? And do you guys reach out to those fans, or how do you essentially translate those leads into group sales?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something I really enjoy talking about. It's actually, so, when I came into the Clippers, I wanted to just kill it, as I always do. And I'm looking at opportunities and ways to increase revenue. And one thing that I quickly learned from doing my research was, now I say that and I don't know off the top of my head, I think it's 3. I just don't want to be completely off. I think it's 3.5. I think 3 million visitors into international visitors, where it's like 5 million. Or maybe, yeah. So it's around 5 million visitors into LA. Okay. And a lot of them are from China. A lot of them are from Australia and, Mexico, South America. And so for us, I didn't zero in on the United States. I zeroed in on the LA market. And what I noticed was a lot of international travelers, they go to 3 cities when they make their trip. And that typically is, at least on the West Coast trip, it's San Francisco, Vegas, and LA. Okay. And so for me, I just want to be part of that stop. I just want them when they're in LA to look for an opportunity to come out to an NBA game and just get the American experience. And so what I did was, once I realized this opportunity existed and that the Clippers had no current strategy on how to take advantage of that, 5 million people, I really started to dive in, and I got with the LA Sports Commission. I got the LA Tourism, got with Discover LA, became members. Clippers were already members, but worked with one of my reps at the time. She was very passionate about it as well, to learn more about how we could start to work with the city, who's obviously reaching out to international markets and trying to get travelers, to get them to recommend the Clippers as part of their stay. And then COVID hit, and that was a huge eye opener for me, because I see this as a really huge opportunity for a lot of people, and a lot of sports teams is what I mean. And so I noticed it in January, December, though. What people in the sports industry, they were like, really didn't even know about COVID, or I'm sure they knew about it, but really weren't concerned about it. Sure. I can tell you I was, because in January and February, I was having people from China and Australia and other countries that they just straight up canceled on us. And, we obviously worked with them. We weren't going to force them, to not get their money back. At the time, though, it wasn't a policy of ours to give money back. So, for us, we're always thinking long term. We made sure that we took care of people. But at the end of the day, that was just foreshadowing to what was coming. You know what I mean? And we obviously, once it got to February, March, we really started getting it. And, at that time, it was the NBA canceling or postponing. So hopefully that changes. I think it'll take a little bit of time to get ratcheted back up. But I do think it's a really big opportunity, because, the international traveler, they don't care as much about the performance of the team they see. I know I said that, but a lot of it, for a lot of these travelers, is just wanting to be a part of the American culture experience. And they know sports is big a part of our culture. And so they look at going into the Staples Center and seeing a hockey game, a basketball game,
of course,
or going over to the Coliseum. Well, not anymore, but going to the Coliseum and seeing a football game. So if the team's bad, you still can take advantage of that opportunity.
When Cliff Lee came back the second time, we signed him, I think it was like December 13th of 2010. I'll never forget that when we thought it was going to happen almost the night before, that next day, like things exploded. And you would think to yourself, like, well, that didn't happen after you won the World Series in 08. It did. Yeah. But it just kept going up. And at that moment, that's when we had to stop selling season tickets, because it just got, when Cliff Lee came back, we're going into that 11th season, and you had the rotation of Halliday and Cliff Lee and Cole Hamels. I mean, it was just, rightfully so. Everyone was so like stoked for the next year, and we were on paper. A really, really good team, and sales just took it to a new level after that. Like it just exploded. Like our season ticket base at that time was like 28,500, and the ballpark holds 43 and change. So I'm not a math major, but you didn't have to sell that many more tickets to get to a sellout when your season ticket base was that much. So Cliff Lee comes to mind, and then when we signed Harper
that's my next question.
February 28th of 19, I was in Florida at the time on a client trip in spring training, but things just absolutely exploded when that news happened. We sold over 110,000 tickets the 24 hours after we signed Bryce Harper. 110,000.
Wow.
It was crazy. I mean, we sold 350,000 tickets the week after. So things just absolutely exploded with the signing of like a Bryce Harper. So, and it was just a different time, because obviously a year ago the team wasn't where it was in 2010 when we brought back Cliff Lee. But that excitement, along with, we signed JT Realmuto earlier, it just, the Bryce Harper signing was crazy in a good way.
Profiles that lead to a positive outcome versus a poor outcome.
Yes.
Surgery. And do you think a lot of, leading to a positive outcome, it's setting that mindset? Do you believe in the mindset being positive prior to surgery? And maybe that.
Absolutely. Well, there's literature on this, and my career has borne this out. Probably the single most important determinant of outcome is belief.
Mm-hmm.
Belief by the patient in the caregiver, number one, and number two, closely behind that in the treatment. And if there's no buy-in, and the patients don't believe they're going to do well, they're not going to do well. I was blessed to be involved with still involved with a multi-center shoulder study group. And we looked at rotator cuff tears that treated non-operatively with physical therapy.
Okay.
And the biggest predictor of outcome, Brian, was not tear size, was not frequency, intensity of therapy, was belief in the treatment. If they didn't believe the therapy was going to help, they didn't get better. If they did believe, they did get better. So in order for them to believe in the care and the caretaker, you have to establish a rapport. So that's why it's so important. There's the old axiom, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's so true. So true. There's an old axiom. It's easier to overtrain than undertrain. Mm-hmm. And when I was at Temple, I had a wonderful mentor, Ray Moyer, and he told me he took care of a lot of NFL athletes. And he said, Joe Klecko, if you remember, he's a great athlete in the 70s. His best season was when he didn't practice. He had a midfoot injury, I think it was, and he would only show up for games. He would lift, eat, sleep, and show up to games and, just maul people. But that was his best season when he didn't practice. I mean, go think about that. And I remember in my, I say, infinitely forgettable college career, by Thursday, I felt my legs were going. And, always felt Monday, I felt good. And all of a sudden I get beaten up again Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And even in your 20s, you feel like overuse kicks in. So there's no question that it's easier to overtrain than undertrain.
And now Tommy John surgery, is it true that after the surgery they're a lot stronger, or is that
no? That's not true. That's a myth promulgated by the lay public.
Okay.
Most of the throwers, and I do that surgery, get back to the first year with a little loss of performance. And there's a recent article saying some people at the second year do have a little bit uptick in performance, but by and large, most of the athletes lose a little bit of velocity. So if people have seen that movie, The Rookie, and they go, oh, well, boy, if I get this, I'll throw 100 miles an hour. Not. So I think one of the reasons people get back and throw stronger is the relative rest that the injury recovery incurs on their shoulder. Because even though it's elbow surgery, one article recently showed that, again, a handful of patients did throw better the second year. But I think it's because of just the long rehab and their relative rest. And they got their kinetic chain and everything else in order.
And, my last question is, you are a stand-up comedian. If we could kind of part ways, if you could just tell a joke here or send us off with a quick routine, if you don't mind.
Well, look, I from Wilmington, Delaware. Most people say Delaware. We have 3 counties, 2 at high tide, and I'm from a rough neighborhood. In fact, my neighborhood was so tough, the kids, they celebrate their birthday 6 months in advance in case they didn't make it. But my father owns a bar. It's been in the family since 1869, and we just redecorated it. We put all new drunks in, so it looks really nice. And it's kind of a dive, Brian. I walked in the other day, and I said to my brother, I said, Mike, where's the men's room? He said, you're in it. I'm a blessed guy, and I live in a dream. I have a vocation to die for. And one of the things I tell patients, like in terms of their shoulder, I'll say, an unstable shoulder, does your shoulder go out more than you do? That's a great question. So anyway, I could go on and on, Brian. I have a different pocket of routines for different occasions. But I did get my license back. And with the COVID thing, times have been tough. The other day, I had to touch up an X-ray to convince a patient that they needed surgery. And with the managed care,
I am laughing. You just
yeah. So with the managed care thing, it's really tough to do the right thing for the patients. I went to a HMO luncheon the other day, and they served split fee soup. Tell your dad that one, split fee soup. So no, that's about it, Brian. I'm getting a little hungry, and it's happy hour now. So yeah, I'm happy to help the cause here.
We'll wrap it up.
Fans, I got my license back. Drug test is pending, but I got my license back.
Well, really good to hear, and it's always good catching up with you, Uncle Kelly. Yeah, James, and if you don't mind shedding some light on the Philadelphia market, it appears that 76 Capital has positioned itself in one of the top emerging esports markets here in the United States, if not really globally. If you just take a ride right now down Broad Street in South Philadelphia, in fact, you'll see the construction of a brand new $50 million arena, dubbed the Fusion Arena, that is essentially a spot for esports fans alike to come out and enjoy esports here in the future. I mean, your firm is positioned at the perfect location in somewhat of the perfect time. I mean, how exciting is that for you, the chief of staff right now?
It's amazing. And look, video games have been a big part of my life. I was fairly socially awkward as a kid. So video games are kind of like, that was my release. That was my way to communicate with people and connect when I wasn't playing baseball. And it's something I've taken with me since then. I mean, even in college, that was what we did. We just played video games when we didn't have practice. We couldn't go out. It was playing video games. And video games are so special because it's a great equalizer. I mean, you can have the star quarterback of a football team be best friends with a kid who's never touched a football in his life because they both want to play Fortnite together. They want to play Call of Duty together. And the kid who's never touched a football is the best Call of Duty player at that school. And that's why they're best friends. And they play together every night. There's not really many other things that bring people together in a unique way like that. And I think that's my favorite thing about esports is the accessibility. I mean, there's ways to give anybody a chance to play at the highest of levels of esports. And you don't need the physical attributes that you need for traditional sports. So to see Philadelphia kind of becoming the East Coast hub of esports has been awesome. And we're right in the middle of that because we invested in Nerd Street Gamers, which is a local company. They're based out of Philadelphia.
Okay.
We were the very first investors in them. And we've seen them go from a little backyard Philadelphia company in Northern Liberties to now being one of the biggest esports players in the country. And they're going to have a huge piece of everything that's going to happen with esports these next few years and months. I mean, they're launching across the country in different Five Below stores right now.
Really cool.
They're working with the Fusion on different practice arenas, things like that. They really just help bring accessibility and infrastructure to anybody. So it's really just it's democratizing esports, which needs to be done because right now people are still unsure of how to get into the space. And I think that the Fusion Arena in Philly is another way to kind of bring that together where, I'm pretty sure we've seen each other at tailgates before and things like that for the Eagles, but like nobody's done that for esports. There hasn't been an avenue for anybody to go do that for esports, but the Fusion Arena will give that opportunity to people and show people that esports is more than just people playing video games. It is a competitive sport. It is exciting to watch, and the fans of esports are some of the most rabid fans I've ever seen. I went to the Overwatch finals, I guess it was a year ago, and Wells Fargo Center was completely sold out. The line was all the way back to Citizens Bank Park, and those fans were going crazy from before it even started to the very, very finish. And it was really cool to see this new type of sport that people are just enthralled by. And it's not your typical sports fan, which is great. So this is really for everybody, and I think that Philadelphia making itself this hub of esports is going to bode well for the future of innovation in the space.
I get so much enjoyment out of going to the gym, working out. Just some free advice here, free guidance here, right? I get so much enjoyment out of working out. I feel great every time I do it. In fact, when I was younger, I was extremely active. I feel like over the years, now that my job has got more intense, I have more burdens, responsibilities, financial pressures, I still go to the gym. However, I don't find myself working out as hard. I feel myself kind of getting a little bit lazy, lackadaisical. Then there's times I do go, I break a sweat, I feel great again. Oh, I'll do this tomorrow. And I just have that issue. It's a push and pull of recent struggles where I just can't get any consistency, right? How would you help me go to the gym, come to the realization that it's what I need, it's what makes me feel good and empowers me and honestly probably benefits me elsewhere in my life?
So Brian, I'll give you an example, then we'll pull this into the story. So I've taken people in my office, and I've had them, depending on whether it's a weight loss or some other athlete, and I have them imagine that we're going on a run. Okay. And I talk about them, it's going on a 3-mile, 5-mile run, and I get into this and feel yourself going up the hill, feel your heart beginning to beat, really begin to get into the moment right now. Just feel yourself going, feel yourself pushing me, I'm pushing you, and you look at it, you've just made 5 seconds, ahead of your thing. And I've had people break out into a sweat, sitting in a chair, because they made it so real in their mind. Their muscles are firing. So this is some of the other tests that you can look up. But they've had people imagine that they've worked out, whether it's a bicep curl, bench press, and so forth. And when they tested them a month later, they saw, I think, it was 11 or 13% the group. So they had a placebo group that did nothing. They had one that went to the gym. They had one that mentally did the exercises but did not lift a weight. They saw gains, almost the same gains from the people that lifted to the people that mentally imagine they've lifted. Wow. Okay. So because what ends up happening is in your mind, you fire and wire, you fire this off through there. You're engaging the muscles, the ligaments, the joints that are there. Right. So this is how powerful your brain is. And it could get us into a whole other topic, but it's not appropriate for today.
A different episode, possibly.
Different episode, yeah. It's going to be more of an R-rated episode for that one. It's another performance anxiety that people have. But it's a perfect example of hypnosis. But so the key thing for someone like yourself would be is that you pull up to the gym, all right? And before you jump out of the car, I want you to, I don't know, do you have a workout sheet if you're doing chest, back, buys, tries? Do you have a?
I do, yes. I just usually I try to write up a plan before I go and then follow it.
So whether, however you got your plan, I want you to sit there and I want you to very quickly go through that. So as you're sitting there now, I want you to imagine, even though you're in front of the mic, imagine you're just going to bench press, right?
Okay.
And imagine that you're warming up. And as you just begin to move your arms, begin to engage it. And as you begin to engage moving that weight up, I want you to see it in your mind's eye. And as you see it in your mind's eye, I want you to feel it. And I want you to feel that smooth movement of your wrist holding it, your elbows flexing, your chest engaged from the extension all the way out. Just lock it out and then let it come back slowly now. And then push it up and see that you can fire out of the hole again, and then bring it back slowly and feel that motion. Feel it again. Feel it again. Feel how easy and lighter the weight gets each and every time. Every time you put more on, it gets lighter and you get stronger, right?
Yeah.
So what are you noticing while you're doing that right now?
I actually noticed my arms kind of tensing a little bit. I noticed kind of like different nerves, my like little kind of reacting in a way.
Right.
I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. And I didn't give you any more details other than just to do this, right?
No.
But all of a sudden your brain's firing and you're imagining that you're pushing some weight. So when you kind of go through that, you can get that pump.
It's a piece I did on a high school wrestler named AJ Deadwire.
Mm-hmm.
And the day before Mother's Day, it's a national story. AJ's father, in a fit of rage, shot and killed AJ's mother. AJ's mother died in his arms. And AJ's younger brother then in turn shot and killed their father. So the day before Father's Day, in a 15-minute span, this family lost their parents. This family lost their mother and father.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
And that kind of launched me. That kind of launched me nationally. It's a story that got millions upon millions of hits. It was on ESPN page 2 at the time, they called it. For about 2 or 3 weeks, it led to a Sports Center piece, and it led to a contract with ESPN for me. And it was a nice deal. It was a nice lucrative situation. And it worked out very well. And I progressed. I started to see things in other ways, and I started to develop as a writer, and I started to see it. I found what that difference was between writing, what real writing is, as opposed to reporting. I don't know if you saw the that embargoed Monday, February 4th story, where he says, I'm not going to say this is made up. He says, I could have been a better teammate. He admitted it.
I actually have the direct quote here. Actually, I took note. If you don't mind, I can read it off. So I said, and I quote from Carson: "I know who I am. First of all," once said, "I know how I carry myself. I know I'm not perfect. I know I have flaws. So I'm not going to sit here and say it was inaccurate and completely made up. I'm not going to do that. But at the end of the day, I will say our locker room is really close. If there were guys that had issues in hindsight, I wish we could have just talked about them." End quote.
Yeah. So we definitely know. I mean, that story, I'd like to be known for the Deadwire story. I'd like to be known for the Charles Conwell story, or the Peter Kahn story, or 50 or 60 other stories that I've done that have been meaningful stories. Not that this story was not a meaningful story. By no means do I mean that. But I'm known for this story. And in some Philadelphia circles, some fan bases in the city, they didn't want to take a look at that. And again, if you remember when saying, I'm not going to say it was made up. And he had that right to say it was made up. He had that platform to say he could have turned around and yelled fake news, and he didn't. I know what the truth is. I have the truth sitting a few feet away from me, and 40 pages worth of transcripts and 5 copies now of I think close to 4.5 to 5 hours worth of tape. I know what was said to me, and common sense tells you don't reach out. You don't put anything out like that. Unless you're right. You don't put out anything like that unless basically it's almost like career suicide. No, just jump. You might as well just jump from the bridge. I've been doing this too long to turn around and take any chances. And I wasn't about to take any chances. So anybody that knows me knows I don't take chances. And I wasn't about to take a chance with that. I double, triple, quadruple check things.
And I started my full-time position with them as the marketing and promo manager, on-field host, color analyst. And that was kind of like my role for the 2019 season. And there were definitely some hiccups whenever we tried to hire a brand new, like, full-time play-by-play announcer going into the 2019 season. Originally, we hired a kid that Dom Catronio, his dad's actually one of the voices for the Oakland A's. Super excited about him. He ends up getting a job in Double-A. Super happy for him, because whenever you're like a broadcaster in sports, it's kind of like being a player. If you get the call up to the next level, you 100% have to go. You can't blame anybody for taking that opportunity.
Sure.
So that kind of, it was like basically 2 months before the season started, and we were in search of a new broadcaster again. And that's when Melanie Newman had reached out, who she's now with the Baltimore Orioles. She reached out and she's like, hey, like, I actually am a free agent right now. What's going on with this? So I had this idea back in October, before we even hired Dom, to have an all-female broadcasting booth. And no females applied at that time. So when Melanie reached out, it was like the stars had aligned. Let's go. Let's make this happen. And when we announced that she was going to be the number one and I was going to be the number two for select road games, it hit the airwaves. I mean, that same night, I'm looking at sportsillustrated.com. I'm on there. I'm in the Boston Globe one day. I'm in the Roanoke Times. I'm on Yahoo Sports. You looked at a sports website, our faces were plastered on it.
Yeah.
It was incredible. And that gave me like a little bit of like what you're saying, like, how do you keep the energy? How do you keep going? When I saw that, I was like,
you're visionary. You saw it. You saw it.
And that's February 28th or 2019 at this point. I'm like, oh, like, I got to take advantage of this. So we go into the season and I am literally running around the ballpark every single day, basically like a chicken with my head cut off. Like, because when you're the marketing and promo manager, you're running social media, you're writing the scripts for the PA announcer. I'm on field hosting. I'm getting the promo crew ready. I'm making all the graphics for the big screen. I'm making a Dropbox to make everything go up on the big screen. I'm clocking people's hours. I'm making sure that X, Y, and Z is okay. If we have a promotion, I'm making sure it's getting out to the gate. Usually, for some reason, I was always the person taking it out to the gate by myself, box after box after box, whatever.
How do you stay organized?
This is probably the best piece of advice that I can give anyone, and it's something that my first boss at AT&T Sports Network ever told me. Every day that you stay in the business, somebody else drops out. And I'll get a little deeper into it, but like I mentioned in my story, there were days where I didn't have enough money in my bank account. I ate ramen noodles for probably a 6-month span at one point. I didn't know what my next step was. There were sleepless nights. There's the comparing yourself to everybody else on Instagram, on Twitter, on their highlight reels, whatever you name it. And a lot of people, they sit there and they're having those same thoughts, and they're in their bed or they're on their couch or they're at their day job and they're like, yep, I'm giving up. Don't be that person that does it, because I promise the longer that you stay in it, the longer you persevere, somebody's going to see that and be like, hey, I want you to work for us. Let's go.
You talked about your network of individuals all across the country. How important is a network to establishing yourself in the sports industry?
It is paramount. We've all heard that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
I think the cliche is applicable to most industries. It is absolute golden rule in sports. You could have all the experience in the world. You could have all the credentials in the world. But if you are not well connected or you do not build those connections, you will miss opportunities. And it won't be, again, because you weren't qualified. You'll just miss them because you were not in the know. Oftentimes in sports, with the exception of entry level, there's a little bit more playing field that's level, but even that, you still can't take it for granted. But as you climb that ladder, it's really about relationships. I have a dear friend who I adore and is absolutely qualified. And she literally was recruited away from Dartmouth to Vanderbilt. So you have a major opportunity at Vanderbilt. You have a new AD who is hiring her own team. And These jobs are posted on search firm websites. They are posted on university websites. But the reality is there is a mechanism that's going on behind closed doors. And it's not inappropriate. It's not illegal. It's not even unethical, because sports, I always say sports is not just so intense, put the glamour on the shelf. We work hard and we work a lot of hours. And sometimes you'll spend more time with your team or at an event or traveling than you will with your own family and friends. And so we need to like each other. We need to work well together. We need to trust each other. Chemistry's key. And so a lot of times people are vetting who they would like in that position, even as these things are posted. And so if you're only relying on that posting, you may miss out, because the posting is going to get 500 to 1,000 resumes or applications or cover letters. And so they may go through some, but there's two things you must know. Number one, they'll go through them on a rolling basis. They'll never go through all of them to handpick the top 10. They'll pick the first top 10 that are great. And there may be a diamond in the rough that's $4.99, and they'll never get to it. And the second thing is you have to realize that they want to hire people they trust and that someone can vouch for. So the person I was mentioning, when she was being recruited, she didn't know the AD at Vanderbilt. They've never met, but the person at Vanderbilt put out to her network, I'm going to be looking for someone for this position. This is what I'm looking for. Do you have anybody you would recommend to me? Because it's key that I can trust this person, that this person can step into the role and pick up. And so there's always going to be those conversations. Your network is absolutely paramount, and not just having a network, nurturing the network and treating people the way you want to be treated. This virus has really impacted the industry, but where my disclaimer was coming in is I always look at things through a different lens. This is also opportunity. This is going to be game changer. So there will be aspects of the business that will come back and look the same as before. But I guarantee you there's going to be new and better and different ways of doing business, ways of taking in a game, ways of participating in events, ways of ticketing, ways of, what do you call it? Artificial intelligence or augmented reality.
Advertising during games with green screens in the fans, in the stands. I mean,
there's going to be new opportunities that come out of it. Some of the old will return, but there's going to be so much new. And so I encourage people to focus on that. Don't focus on what we've lost. We're just in a moment of pause and we have to recalibrate. But if you embrace it and say, what's next? This is also a great time for sports entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Podcasts, new technologies. It's just, I look at it that way. I'm not ignoring the challenges, but rather than focus on those, I focus on, well, what's on the other side of that challenge? Because every challenge on the other side is an opportunity.
And I met a gentleman by the name of Ian Cox at the airport, who I believe you know. He actually at the time offered me the ticket to the match between Derby County in the playoff championship. Fortunately, I couldn't go, but that seemed like an incredible match. I saw the fans explode and erupt when QPR was promoted. Has there ever been another time in your career, aside from that, or maybe it was that time, where you kind of lost your sense of time and just lost your professionalism and just gone crazy,
Yeah. Yes.
I still regret not going to that game. I couldn't make it. It kills me, but.
Yeah, that was a big mistake on your part, Brian, I've got to say.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I mean, that's a prime example. That was, the playoff final. So whichever team won that match would get promoted into the Premier League. So it's the biggest domestic game in world football. It's huge. It's a huge game. And we were down to 10 men, and it was horrendous to watch because you just felt like you were waiting for Derby, who we were playing against. You were waiting for Derby to score. And we were just hanging on, and we were basically just hoping to get through to penalties at the end of extra time. But with a minute to go of normal time, Bobby Zamora scored for QPR, and we won promotion. And so from our point of view, we needed to get pitch side, to get the content, to get on the pitch at the end of the game, to get the interviews. So myself and Ian Taylor, who was head of media at QPR at the time, he since moved on. The pair of us were running down the stairs, but the game was still going on. It was in injury time. So we're running down the stairs because we needed to be there for the reaction. But my fear was, we're going to get down, Derby are going to have equalised, and then we've got to go back upstairs to watch extra time. So me and Ian were having this row as we're running down the stairs. And I said, they're going to score. And he's saying, they're not. Let's get going. Thankfully, Ian was right, I was wrong, and we got pitch side just as the final whistle went. And then we did some post-match content. And it was amazing. It was a very, very special day. But yeah, there are plenty of examples where you get a little bit too excited or caught up in the moment. I mean, we had a situation where it was when we were in the Premier League and we were battling to stay up. And for those of you that are more familiar with the Premier League, you may remember the Sergio Aguero goal, which was actually against QPR. And that day we were battling to stay in the Premier League. And thankfully, because of a result elsewhere that day, we stayed up. Had the result elsewhere between Bolton and Stoke not gone our way, that Aguero goal would have relegated us in the process. And actually, some of our players on the pitch thought that goal had relegated us. And then they found out, no, it's okay because the other result's gone our way. So, look, it's a very passionate game. And if there are people who work within it who can say they don't get caught up in the passion, then they're either liars or more professional than I am, because I'm certainly guilty of doing it. What I'd say is, I mean, the who you know, not what you know is true, and you have to understand you can affect that. I would absolutely advise against sending random emails to loads of organisations saying, are there any vacancies? And the reason I say that is because, well, one, because everyone does that. So it's just, you're not standing out. And the second reason is you're almost putting it on. So say it's a football club you contact. You're almost putting it on the football club to find you a role. What you need to do is flip it. So you find the role and you tell the football club about the role that exists. What I mean by that is, say, for instance, we have our under-18s. Now, when we play first team games of football, that can often coincide with under-18s games. So our resources are around the first team naturally. So we aren't in a position to cover our under-18s. So you could contact the club and say, love the coverage you do around the first team. Start with a compliment. Everyone loves a compliment. However, I've noticed you're not able to cover the under-18s to the same level, which I'm assuming is down to a resource issue. I would love to help in that regard. Can I come along, do match reports? I'll send you the report for your website and I will gain experience by doing that. So that works on so many levels. One, you've found the issue, that you've found the problem and the solution. It works for us because you're going to go cover those games, send the report to us so we can upload to the website. So it's good content and it's easy from our side. And it works for you because, one, obviously you're building experience, but more importantly than that, you're actually getting your foot in the door. So then hypothetically down the line, if the football club you're at gets promoted to the Premier League or is in a position to expand, or someone leaves the press department, you think, okay, we need to recruit someone. Well, this guy has been working covering our under-18s for 6 months. He or she is super reliable, trustworthy, provides great content, and they say, yeah, I'm interested. I want to be interviewed for the job. Well, that person has already got a foot up on all the other candidates because you've been working with them already. So that's one thing. And the second thing I'd say is, everyone would love to work in the Premier League or right at the top end of the football pyramid, but the opportunities come further down. So look towards the lower level. So if you're talking in England, look towards the National League, which is 5 tiers down from the Premier League. Contact those clubs because they will have very limited resources. And say, look, I'd love to come in and help you out. Can I cover your 23s? Can I do this? Can I do that? Again, you get your foot in the door. Then if an opportunity comes higher up the footballing pyramid, you can apply for that and you've got a reference. I've been working in the National League with this person. this is their head of media, and he's going to say lovely things about me. So again, you've used that time to one, build contacts and build experience, but most importantly, to get your foot in the door. So that's the most important thing. And to have an attitude that's beyond, if you're asked to do A and B, for instance, if you're asked to do a match report, do the match report, but don't think that's all I have to do. That's all you've been asked to do, but what more can you do? Actually, my dad's got a really nice stills camera. I'm going to bring that and take some photos. Send it through. Here's a match report. By the way, I borrowed my dad's camera, and here's some nice stills images. Brilliant. Or afterwards, player X scored a hat trick, and I was stood by him, asked him for a couple of words. Here's an interview. So don't just do the basics. Do the basics as a must, but always have your eyes open about what else can I do.
Yeah, I reached out to Portnoy because everybody knows who Dave Portnoy is. He's a very polarizing figure, and I want to make it fun. So saying that we can name the field after him, kind of making the funny tweets and memes, things like that, it's kind of an easy way to approach it and made people actually think it was funny and care about it. And if we look at it from the perspective that Portnoy is new to Philly, he loves the city, he's the so-called king of Philly, and there's a baseball program in need that really could use somebody like him, like his help. It was a perfect storm. So again, I just put the tweet out there. It was one of those things. I just wrote it, I sent it, and next thing I know, it kind of went a little viral. And again, virality is all luck. You have to have the right people engage with it, if the right people see it. And honestly, we got extremely lucky with the way it worked out. But he was in right away as soon as he sent that tweet back to me. And at that point, it was kind of a scramble trying to find out how to actually get in touch with him to figure out the ways to save the program. And luckily, I believe it was Patrick Gordon from Philadelphia Baseball Review sent me a DM on Twitter and said, "Hey, here's Portnoy's email. Email him." So I shot him an email kind of outlining what we need to do, how I think we could do it using Barstool. And I want to make sure this is clear. We've never asked them for money. We never thought or asked them for money because that's just not how this is going to work. Like this is bigger than just getting, a few $1 million or a few $100,000. This is for the greater good of LaSalle. So we wanted Barstool to help with the publicity aspect. And that's what, obviously the pizza review that happened the other day, that's what it helped to do. Now, over 1.5 million people understand the cause. They've seen the cause. They know what they can do to help. And that's what we want. And people really do care about and know about LaSalle way more than they did last week.
Well, I'll start with the first angle is some of the major league players coming down. We were lucky enough to connect with Jed Lowry. He's on the Mets currently. He played for the A's, the Astros in Boston as well. 10 years in the big leagues, all-star player, his last active season, and great guy. And I met him through the sports diplomacy program of the Department of State, and he was coming down to do clinics with them. We were asked to help manage him, and that kind of really was one of the launching points for our relationship with the Department of State and a lot of the education programs we've done subsequently. So it's been amazing. We then did a trip to him. That was in Colombia. We did 3 cities in Colombia. Then we did another one in Nicaragua with him. And so he's great. His buddy, John Mayberry, who was on the Phillies, actually, John Mayberry Jr., he came down and did a clinic with us. Several Nicaraguan professionals did that. And then most recently in December, we did an event with 15 active MLB players from Colombia and Venezuela and one from the United States. Nick Birdie from the Pittsburgh's, he's on Pittsburgh, I believe, the Pirates pitcher. And all the Colombian guys, several Venezuelan guys, including Altuve, who came down. And that was amazing. We did clinics, and it had to do with integrating the Venezuelan population with the Colombians through the sport. And through that, the Players Association, which is the Players Union, donated $150,000 to the organization to carry out this work. So we're still working on developing those projects to get them moving. Obviously, this last year has been a little complicated. That all happened right before the pandemic, so we're just getting back to work on that. So we started in Nicaragua, which I'm not sure if you mentioned. Nicaragua.
I did not. That's the one country I looked at.
Yeah, the one country. It's their number one sport.
There.
It's all right. So Yeah, so that's actually, so I did some college level, like master's level studies of the sport as well, actually. And what I did, I looked at the evolution of baseball in Latin America. That was did like a thesis type paper, not quite as long as yours, because I don't know if I'm capable of 52-page paper, but maybe it was 30. And
I think like 15 of my pages were pictures, so it's all right.
There you go. That fills it up. So I did the evolution of baseball in Latin America. So I was well aware that Nicaragua, it was a hot spot. So we did an analysis to determine where we were going to start helping. And just to be clear about what we do, one of our main functions is we get equipment donations in the United States, used and new, and we get them to local programs, nonprofit programs that need the supplies to maintain their operations so the kids can play softball and baseball. It's one of our main functions. We can talk about some of the other stuff we do. So when we started, that was pretty much all we did, and we had to figure out where we were going to start. And so we looked at 3 or 4 factors to determine what would be the smartest place to where we can make the biggest impact, really. We looked at operational feasibility, meaning is it safe to operate and is it functional? The other one was that's probably the 4th one, but the main one is where are they already playing the sport, and where do they like the sport and they're passionate about it? Where are they lacking support internationally? As I said, operational feasibility. And then I can't remember. More or less, those are the 3 most important ones. And Nicaragua was just hands down the place because it's their number 1 sport. They get 0 international support from the community, almost 0, because they don't pump out major league talent, so therefore the world doesn't even know they play. And they, at that time, when I started, it was easier to operate. Right now, it's a little tricky. So we haven't been there for a couple of years. So we had a great experience. That's where we started. We helped, thousands of kids there, and just made some really great relationships with the communities. So yes, we are in Central America. Panama is possibility down the road. We have been in Guatemala and El Salvador. Sorry, Honduras and El Salvador, and Mexico. I would be interested in Mexico. And we've also been in Cuba since I started mentioning where we've been. So we've been in Cuba as well. I've delivered there and worked with some communities. And Brazil, which I love.
If you enjoyed the first season of the SBR podcast, then stay tuned for season 2, where I'll bring you even more exclusive interviews with sports business professionals from around the globe. In the meantime, remember to check us out for additional content across all social media handles. We are on Twitter and Instagram at SBR_podcast. If you are more of a Facebook or YouTube person, you can check us out on either platform at Sports Business Review. We are now even on LinkedIn at the same name, Sports Business Review. Lastly, if you feel the need to provide any further feedback, please visit www.sportsbusinessreview.com, the official home of the SBR podcast. Once again, my name is Brian McDonough, and have a great week, everyone.